Welcome back to some more interesting questions. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate you guys coming. Um, I've made some changes, obviously, to the podcast. I've gone with upgraded a little bit. Went with the 4K camera. You know, got the neon sign in the background, and um, just kind of testing stuff out. I'm gonna make some changes to the podcast. Um, I want it to be more interesting for you guys. Um, because this is interesting questions. So gotta keep it interesting, right? Um, but on the real note, I have a new video here for you. I haven't recorded one in a few days. I've had a few uploads from stuff that I recorded before. But this one it's a good one. It's one near and dear to my heart. It's the Mandela effect, and I've actually, experienced the Mandela effect myself. Like I literally seen it, and I'm like, wait a second, like Crossman or Berenstain Bears or Berenstein Bears or because I remember when I was a kid, it was the Berenstein Bears, and now it's the Berenstain Bears. Um, Captain Crunch, I was like one of my favorite cereals as a kid, and I remember that one. It was Captain Crunch because the character is a captain. He's wearing a captain's hat, but now it's Captain Crunch. I don't know. I don't remember. I always remember it as Captain Crunch. Um, but you know, maybe the small collider we had here in the U.S. that was built, way back when before the Large Hadron Collider. Maybe it was they were smashing particles in there, and that was changing. So one of the theories behind the Mandela effect is a really good one. A really good theory behind it was basically uh, they're saying when they're smashing these particles, they're opening up parallel dimensions or like parallel universes or whatever. And what it is they're saying that information leaks in from one parallel universe into ours, and you're literally exchanging information with your parallel self in this universe. So some of their information leaks in and some of your information leaks out with your alternate, your alternate self. And they're saying you're exchanging information, so that's why you remember stuff differently. That is actually one of the theories behind the Mandela effect, which I think is very intriguing because it's almost like science fiction, but like what if it could be true, kind of a case and scenario. So without further ado, I'm gonna get to the video. But if you like this video, please hit that subscribe button, subscribe up, give me some likes, and share it with family and friends or whatever. If they're into stuff like this, I love stuff like this. Um, we're gonna get to the Mandela effect right now. It changes the scene here, and we will go from there.
Pikachu having a black tail, Mickey Mouse wearing suspenders, and Henry VIII eating a turkey leg have in common? The answer? We'll find out later in this video, where we cover the Mandela effect, which refers to a situation in which a large mass of people believe that an event occurred when it did not. So does your memory serve you right? Let's find out in this video. The Berenstain Bears is a childhood classic. In this show, it follows a family of bears known as the Berenstain Bears as they figure out life together. But how many of you guys actually remember it being Berenstain Bears, placed with an E instead of an A? But if you take a deep look at it now, it's actually Berenstain Bears with an A. Many people even have claimed to have seen it with the letter E instead of A. However, when you take a look at it nowadays, there's just an A. Pikachu's missing tail. Now, we all know Pikachu. He's one of the most iconic Pokemon in the series. But how many of you guys actually remember Pikachu's design? I mean, try to think as far back as you can. Well, if you were like me, you remembered him with a black tail. In fact, there was times
I remember watching Pokemon when I was a teenager, and I do remember him with the black tip on the end of his tail. That's how I remember him. Um, but I've had people tell me, nah, he never had a black tip on the end of his tail, and I'm like, that's how I remembered Pikachu was, he had the black tip on the end of his tail. So
In my childhood where I would draw him with a black tail. But surprisingly, it turns out he never had black stripes on his tail ever. In fact, his entire tail, besides the bottom part, is yellow. And this can be shown throughout the old episodes too. The Monopoly Man and his monocle. Monopoly, the game that would tear apart families. If you've never heard of Monopoly, it is a real estate board game for 2 to 8 players. And the player's goal is to remain financially solvent while forcing opponents into bankruptcy by buying and developing pieces of property. And this board game's been around for quite some time. It actually developed in 1935. However, how many of you
I actually do remember the Monopoly Man. I used to play this game with my youngest sister and my brother, and I absolutely remember him having a monocle. It's weird. Human memory is not. I remember watching a show called Mind Games. Human memory is horrible. That show literally shows you um, our ability to observe things and our ability to memorize things are horrible. If you look up Brain Games, it was on the Science Channel, and it really makes you rethink. Like, oh wow, what did I really see? It's a crazy show. Check it out.
guys actually remember the Monopoly Man having a monocle? I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is his iconic monocle. Where would he be without it? But contrary to popular belief, he never had one. Now, how is this possible? It gets deeper. How many of you guys remember Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs? Well, if you remember it, you will also remember that the Wicked Queen in Snow White famously says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall," or does she? Now, you guys are gonna think that I'm lying to you. However, she actually says, "Magic mirror on the wall." I mean, there's even a movie titled Mirror, Mirror after the iconic quote. It released in 2012, however, that's the iconic line. Here's a somewhat recent one. American Psycho. The movie was popularized off of a bunch of memes that have taken place recently.
I always remember the saying because I remember my sister, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" I remember that just being the saying, So magic mirror on the wall, but I mean, like I said, human memory is really bad. We don't we or someone changes something. It's sort of like the Star Wars quote where he goes, "Luke, I am your father." Turns out he never said that's not what he says. He says, "Yes, Obi-Wan says you killed my father." And he goes, "No, I am your father." And everyone goes, "Well, wait a second, that changed." But it may have not changed. Someone may have said the quote, "Luke, I am your father." And it was popularized that was the quote. And I'm not saying it wasn't a Mandela effect. Maybe it was. Maybe the Mandela effect is real. Why? Because I've experienced things where I'm like, yeah, I don't remember that being that way.
Recently, particularly belonging to the Sigma male category of memes. However, do you remember this scene? The scene in which Patrick Bateman wrinkled his eyebrows. However, he never did. And there's countless TikToks that do the same thing, all wrinkling their eyebrows. But for what? I mean, we're discovering these things even as the days go by. Have any clue what it means? Maybe we'll find out by the end of this video. But before we take a deeper dive, please do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you like this type of content. That way, if this phenomenon ever takes place again, You'll
Yes,
see if you really
please
truly
check
like it or
out
not. Curious George, one of my favorite
Suzuki.
childhood TV shows, and I'm sure it was
I
plenty
agree.
of
Check
yours
him
as
out.
well. In this show, it follows the story of an orphan monkey named George and his adventures with the man in the yellow hat. The two have many episodes together, but one thing you may have not have noticed was, if you take a look at George, where is his tail? Most people remember him swinging around with a tail, but he is actually tailless. Now this is even a shocker to me because in many of the book covers and illustrations you can see this, which is surprising because he's not a chimpanzee either. He's identified in the show as a little monkey, so ideally he should have a tail. Now, how many of you guys like Star Wars? Well, this one's gonna be quite interesting to you. Does Luke, I am your father ring a bell? Well, yeah, it's a legendary line from Star Wars, right? Wrong, as many believe the famous quote is actually, no, I am.
And like I said, I didn't know this was coming up. I don't watch these videos. I watch them with you guys. So this is a prime example of what I just said. I don't watch these videos. I watch them with you guys and I just give commentary on them. So this is a prime example. Did not know this was in here. So there was, sorry, this was a spoiler alert, but I did not know that this was actually in this video because I have not watched this video. I'm watching it with you.
Am your father. And Darth Vader actually never mentions Luke. Now, this is one I just can't wrap my head around because everybody mentions Luke, I am your father. It's iconic. That's the phrase. When in reality, this entire time, it's just no, I am your father. What does this all mean? Type your theories in the comments below, guys, because none of this makes sense. This one's for cereal lovers. What about Fruit Loops? How many of you guys remember eating Fruit Loops? Personally, I think they were delicious.
I ate
And
those.
how many of you guys remember each individual Fruit Loop tasting different? Well, that's not the case because all of them are actually the same fruit flavor. There's even some people remembering Fruit Loops saying Fruit Loops, the actual F-R-U-I-T, instead of Fruit Loops as it normally is. But what truly is the Mandela effect? Well, we know it's a phenomenon where people have shared false memories, in this case, a lot of people. However, many people believe that these false memories are evidence that parallel universes exist, and that we're beginning to shift in between them. Many people even go as far as to say that it's to condition us so we can't think for ourselves, to have more control over people, essentially. So now, before we get into the last and final two Mandela effects.
I'm trying to say it's a psyop. Never know. Could be. It's possible.
You guys do not want to miss out on these. A Bug's Life, another classic Pixar movie that released in 1998. And man,
I can say with all honesty, I've never seen the movie Bug's Life. So, if you have, and what he's saying makes sense to you or doesn't make sense to you because it's a Mandela effect, please leave a comment below explaining to me because I've never seen the movie.
I used to love this movie as a kid. How many of you guys actually remember seeing advertisements for A Bug's Life 2 and remembering there being A Bug's Life 2? Now, what is causing this confusion? I myself can even remember there being possibly A Bug's Life 2, but it not releasing. And now, our last and final Mandela effect. Many of you guys, if you're like me, love drinking soda, and specifically Coca-Cola. Now, Coca-Cola has a version of Coke named Coke Zero. And which one of these photos do you believe? Was it Coca-Cola Zero or Coke Zero? Now, this one really stuck to me because it turns out this entire time it was Coca-Cola Zero. When I remember it being...
I've been drinking Coke Zero for a while, and I will tell you right now, it was Coke Zero. I remember that. I remember distinctively always saying Coke Zero. And the icon that's on the screen right now was Coke. It was never Coca-Cola Zero. It was Coke Zero. And that's how they marketed it, is not as Coca-Cola. Now, this is something that I can actually really relate to. I'm telling you right now, it was Coke Zero.
being Coke Zero. I mean, people even call it Coke Zero. It turns out Coke Zero never actually existed. The name was just Coca-Cola Zero. I mean, there's even countless Redditors that are saying it's always been Coke Zero. I noticed when the box and can said Coca-Cola Zero, and just like that, we made it through all 10. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love to see a comment.
Yeah, I mean, I could say with all honesty, I remember distinctively it saying Coke Zero. Just Coke, then Zero. Like that was actually how it was marketed because it was like in a way they wanted it to market it away from being Coca-Cola. Like that was like it was like a new trademark for them, Coke Zero. And I remember even like advertisements like, oh, Coke Zero, you know. I mean, most people don't say Coca-Cola. I know that. Most people say, oh, can I get a Coke? But I remember that distinctively. So that is a very odd Mandela effect to me personally. Because I mean I try to stay away from the sugar sodas. I usually stick to the diets or the zero sugars or whatever. So distinctively I do remember it saying Coke Zero. So if you remember it differently, maybe I'm wrong. Um, but leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Um, I appreciate your guys' your time with me, watching these videos with me, because like I said, I don't watch the videos, so I watch them with you. Um, like, subscribe, leave a comment below, and share the video. And on that note, I'm gonna point it out to the background. Peace.